Hello everybody and welcome to this week's edition of Every Day is a School Day with the Butterfly Princess. This week we're discussing Lecture 7 that is entitled Alexander's Impact on the Jews from the course Jesus and His Jewish Influences. So here goes. Alexander's impact on the Jewish community is quite intriguing. When he conquered Judea, which was part of his persuasive charm, aside from military might, was his relatively tolerant approach to local customs and religions. Thus, this approach aided in preserving Jewish traditions during his reign. Alexander's practices of integrating cultures allowed the Jewish community to continue practicing their faith without forced association, creating a period where Hellenistic and Jewish cultures coexisted. And Hellenism, we've come across this word throughout before. Hellenism is the spread of Greek culture. Alexander the Great holds a unique place in Jewish tradition. The intersection of history and legends offers some intriguing stories. One of the most popular tales involves Alexander visiting Jerusalem, where he is welcomed by the high priest. According to tradition, Alexander respected their religion and customs, even sparing the city from destruction, a testament to a mutual respect. The story represents a moment of harmony between cultures. It's fascinating how stories like these can mirror our own cultural blending. The story of Alexander and the high priest is quite captivating and thus offers valuable insights into cultural and interfaith respect. The tale goes like this. As Alexander approached Jerusalem during his conquest, the Jewish high priest, dressed in splendid attire, went out to greet him. Instead of attacking, Alexander is said to have bowed before the high priest, claiming to have seen him in a dream as a sign from the gods. This gesture led to peaceful relations between Alexander and the Jews, with Alexander allowing them to practice their faith freely. The tale of Alexander and the Samaritans is another intriguing episode of his journey. While legend plays a significant part in how we understand these interactions, the historical frameworks offer perspectives into these exchanges' complexities. The Samaritans viewed Alexander as an opportunity to gain favour and influence. However, history suggests they faced conflict after opposing the Jews, a move that Alexander did not favour. This eventually led to a significant respect for the repercussions from the Samaritans. Alexander, after his death, is a striking example of the unexpected and complexity of historical legacies. And we're going to discuss next week Alexander's successors to the throne. But I would like to point out that it's quite interesting that none of Alexander's successors for Ptolemy's or the Seleucids were actually blood relations, blood direct descendants of Alexander the Great. Alexander did marry, in fact, he had 3 wives, and some of their marriages bore him children. However, after Alexander's death, because he died quite young, he was only about 33 years old, his wives and his offspring were murdered, were killed. So none of his successors who succeeded Alexander were blood relations of Alexander, but they wanted to incorporate bits of Alexander into their rule. They wanted to look, even though they weren't direct descendants of Alexander, so they didn't share any like genetics with him, they still went about trying to look like Alexander, and this is provenant on like coins and stuff, because in ancient times many ordinary people of the public didn't really get to see what the monarch looked like. So on coins and things like that, that was the only time that the ordinary everyday people got to see what their monarch looked like. So that's for next week when we'll talk about the succession. So upon his passing in the year 323 BCE, his vast empire faced a dilemma. This was because Alexander had not established a clear succession plan. So, sparking a series of conflicts known as the Wars of the Gegem. His generals, known as the Gegem, fought to gain control and carve up the empire into several Hellenistic kingdoms. These divisions resulted in multiple territories such as the Ptolemaic Egypt and Seleucid Empire, and the Antigone dynasty in Macedonia. This fragmentation reminds us of how the absence of decisive leadership can lead to fragmentation, much like the scattered connections between characters and events in Jane Eyre. So what were these wars? These conflicts offer a fascinating glimpse into the complexities of power and legacy after Alexander's untimely death. The wars began shortly after Alexander passed away in Babylon, leaving behind his immense empire, but no clear successor. His generals, the Gegems, a term that means success. This translates in English that means successors, were left to juggle their ambitions and alliances, resulting in a tremendous struggle for control. These wars lasted for about 4 decades, 40 years, as the generals attempted to consolidate territories and establish their own dynasties. Significant figures include Ptolemy, who founded the Ptolemaic dynasty in Egypt, and it's interesting to know that the Ptolemies had a lot of descendants from the Ptolemaic line. One of their multiple descendants was actually Cleopatra VII, the most famous Cleopatra, who had a love affair with the Roman general Mark Antony, who was the actual last female pharaoh of ancient Egypt. And the Seleucids, who established the Seleucid Empire. The rise of Hellenism Hellenization in Judea is an intriguing aspect of cultural fusion and adaptation. Following Alexander's conquest, Greek culture spread across the regions he had unified, which included the land of Judea. This period saw the introduction of Hellenistic culture, which included language, art, and philosophies into Jewish society. The integration wasn't always smooth sailing, as some Jewish communities embraced aspects of Greek culture and others resisted it, wanting to preserve their traditional practices and beliefs. These tensions eventually led to significant events like the Maccabean Revolt, which we will discuss later on from another episode, which when resistance to Hellenistic influences peaked. So now what is the connection between Alexander the Great and Jesus, who was thought to be the Messiah and led the movement, and who was crucified by the Romans, and through his death and through Jesus' death, there became the birth of a new religion known as Christianity. This is more about fascinating intersections of cultural and historical shifts. Though they lived in different time periods, Alexander's conquest played a pivotal role in shaping the world that Jesus would later inhabit. Alexander's expedition spread Greek culture and language throughout his empire, including the region surrounding Judea. The Hellenistic wave influenced the same cultural landscape that came to define the era in which Jesus lived. By the time of Jesus, Greek had become a common language across many areas, enabling of ideas, including the teachings of Jesus himself. This shows how one historical figure's actions can contribute to shaping a broader cultural or religious movement. So in the time of Jesus, he actually spoke a language known as Aramaic. Alexander and the world of Jesus mirror the complex layers in the right. So the idea of Alexander the Great as a figure for the coming Messiah. This is an intriguing example of historical narrative and interpretation. In certain historical texts, Alexander is portrayed in almost a profitable light, sometimes considered a divinely chosen leader. And it's interesting to know that Alexander's mother, Olympia, actually thought she had been impregnated by the chief Greek god of Zeus. So Olympia believed that Philip II of Macedon wasn't the biological father of Alexander. The actual biological father, according to Olympia, Alexander's mother, was in actual fact the Greek chief god Zeus. And that could be sort of mirrored with Jesus, because if we're looking to the story of Jesus, it is believed that Mary, the virgin birth, the virgin mother of Jesus, was actually impregnated by the Holy Spirit. So she believed that Jesus was descendant from God. His unprecedented military achievements and rapid expansion of his empire were viewed as divinely guided by some cultures. It's worth exploring how such perceptions arise from legendary tales and interpretation. This preoccupation of Alexander, this perception of Alexander as a messianic figure also highlights the influence of charisma and accomplishment on the perception of leaders in history.
Back last night on the 2nd of March, was stood there, she asked me, he tried and spoke to me. I was sick, she pissed her off about that, doing you wrong. I said, you would speak to Paul, I can't do it like this. And I said, don't let get the better of you.
Yeah.
Just leave it, it's her problem.
Yeah.
So she don't want to speak, or speak to her.
Yeah.
And if Paul comes to me at some point, I think this, I say, yeah, she's the problem. I've done nothing, nothing wrong. No, she hasn't spoke to me.
Yeah.
Out that's the I've got on.
Yeah, and because
yeah.
Throughout history, certain individuals have been viewed as messiahs due to their extraordinary qualities, leadership, or perceived miracles. These figures often embody hopes for positive change and salvation, whether in religious, cultural, or political contexts. Examples might include figures like Cyrus the Great, who was seen by some as a Messianic liberator in Jewish exile. Accounts due to his decree allowing Jews to return to Jerusalem and rebuild the Jewish temple. This idea reflects how societies can project their aspirations into influential figures, moulding them into iconic representations of hope or transformation. The similarities between Alexander the Great and Jesus might not be direct, but they share intriguing parallels in their narratives and influence. Historical influence. Both Alexander and Jesus had significant impacts on the world, a bit in different realms. Alexander reshaped the political landscape through vast conquests, while Jesus transformed spiritual and philosophical thought, inspiring countless generations. Iconic leadership. Each became a symbolic leader of a movement that transcended their own lifetime. Alexander's legacy forged a new era of Hellenistic culture, while Jesus' teachings became foundations for Christianity, shaping religious beliefs globally. Narrative of miracle. Both lives are surrounded by stories of extraordinary events that contribute to their legendary status. Alexander's military campaigns are sometimes described with a sense of divine favour, while the miracles attributed to Jesus are central to the Christian faith. The idea that, now then I thought maybe we don't really know if there was a historical Jesus, but if there was, or if there wasn't, because there might be a possibility that there wasn't, there may have been a man called Jesus who lived in these times, but was there really a man called Jesus who performed all the things attributed to the Jesus attributed to the Christian faith? So I thought, like, could Alexander the Great have been could Jesus have been a legendary character based on the influences and influenced by figures like Alexander the Great? This presents an interesting exploration of cultural and historical narrative. While Jesus and Alexander share impactful legacies, they are rooted in distinct historical and religious contexts. Jesus' life and teachings are chronicled in religious texts, primarily the New Testament, with deeply spirited and ethnical dimensions. On the other hand, the story of Alexander is often more focused on geographical achievements and military conquest. The blend of myth and history surrounding both figures illustrates how storytelling and legend can evaluate real historical individuals to greater symbolic stature. The narratives around their lives have been shaped by time, inspiration, and cultural perspectives. The role of narratives in shaping our understanding of historical figures is truly profound. The stories we tell about historical individuals are often coloured by cultural, political, and ethnical perspectives. These narratives can simplify complex lives into symbols of highlighting certain traits while potentially obscuring others. For example, Alexander the Great is often celebrated for his military genius and visions of a connected empire, but narratives also occasionally overshadow the tragedies and turbulence his conquest caused. Similarly, that is similar to Jesus. Is reserved for his teachings and considered a spiritual leader, with narratives focusing on his profound influence rather than the broader historical complexities of his era. Narratives can also be used internationally to inspire or instruct, creating heroes or examples for societies to emulate. The layers of storytelling, the intertwining stories of Jesus and Alexander the Great and how they influenced culture is quite fascinating. Both figures left a profound mark on the regions they took, shaping religious and cultural landscapes that continue to influence the world today. Alexander's conquest spread Hellenistic culture far and wide, creating a blend of Greek and local traditions through art, philosophy, and governance. His empire facilitated the widespread exchange of ideas and cultural integration long after his era. On the other hand, Jesus' teachings are rooted in Judeo-Christian values, influence spiritual and moral thought, profoundly impacting Western culture and beyond. His life and messages inspired countless works of art, literature, and ethical discourse. The cultural exchange and fusion ignited by both figures highlight the dynamic nature of human societies, how beliefs, practices, and ideas evolve through interaction and narration. The conquest of Alexander the Great had notable impacts on the Jewish people, both in the short and also the long term. Short-term effects: cultural exchange. Alexander's conquest brought Jewish communities into closer contact with Hellenistic culture, leading to an interchange of ideas and practices. This period of cultural exchange saw the blending of Greek and Jewish philosophers, political stability. Initially, Alexander's conquest increased political stability in the region, providing a framework where different cultures could interact and coexist under his remarkable empire. Long-term effects: Hellenization. Over time, Jewish communities in places like Alexandria, which was a city he named after himself, which is located in Egypt, became heavily influenced by Hellenistic culture, impacting religious practices and social life. This cultural blending eventually led to developments like the Septuagint, which is a Greek translation of Hebrew scriptures. Division and conflict. The spread of Hellenistic culture created divisions within Jewish society between those who embraced Hellenism and those who resisted it. This tension contributed to conflicts, as we've already mentioned, such as the Maccabean revolt, which arose from varying degrees of acceptance or resistance to outside influence. Exploring the idea of Alexander the Great as a model for the mythical image of Jesus involves considering the equipitrical traits and narrative elements that both figures share. One, divine association. Both are often perceived as having a divine connection. Alexander was sometimes portrayed as the son of Zeus, an idea that reinforced his authority and exceptional nature. This divine sonship shares a thematic element with the stories of Jesus, who is regarded as the Son of God in Christian theology. Charismatic leadership. Alexander's ability to inspire and lead vast numbers of people across different cultures is mirrored in Jesus' role as a spiritual leader, drawing followers who viewed him as a guiding light. Their charisma transcended normal leadership. Alexander in a geographical sense, and Jesus in a spiritual sense. Legendary status. Both figures have been developed by legendary tales that amplify their achievements and influences. Stories of Alexander's endeavours and prowess echo the miracle narratives surrounding Jesus, which have become central to the religious teachings. Universal impact. The legacy each left behind is marked by a widespread and enduring cultural impact. Alexander's conquest spread Hellenistic ideas, while Jesus' teachings fostered the growth of Christianity, both shaping values and beliefs. Alexander's the Great mythical enhancements. Alexander's historical conquests were often interwoven with mythical elements, like the legend of the Golden Locks or his supposed divine parentage. These stories amplified his grandeur and extraordinary capabilities, transforming him from a historical figure into a critical mythical hero. Cultural symbolism. His narrative served as a symbol of and visionary leader, reflecting a blend of factual achievements and legendary establishments. This mixture enhances his portrayal as a person who transcends time, impacting various cultures and ideologies. Jesus now is a mythical, miraculous narratives. The stories of Jesus are deeply entrenched in miracle deeds such as the healing of the sick, or the walking on the water. These mythical elements reinforce the divine nature and offer spiritual lessons. The transcended basic history indicating the persuasive impact on religious and cultural beliefs. Spiritual epigraphy type. He exemplifies the archetype of a spiritual leader and saviour, where historical events are often interwoven with profound symbolic meaning, creating a narrative that is both a historical account and a source of moral guidance. How they intersect. The narratives of both figures create powerful archetypes that go beyond their historical realities, embodying them deeply in cultural consciences. This blending reflects humanity's desire to evaluate extraordinary individuals into timeless symbols. It is also captivating how texts and traditions can lead us through history like a winding path through a mysterious forest. These are the typical characteristics of the Hellenistic age and its interaction into religion and cultural narratives. Key elements of the Hellenistic age. Cultural diffusion. The Hellenistic age was marked by the spread of Greek culture across the Mediterranean and Near East following Alexander the Great's conquest. This diffusion led to the synthesis of local customs with Greek philosophy, art, and governance. Philosophical growth. New schools of thought like Stoicism and ethics flourished during the era, enhancing philosophical discourse. These schools impacted subsequent Jewish and Christian thought, encouraging discussions around ethics, spirituality, and the nature of existence. Religious synchronization. The blending of religious traditions enriched spiritual practices across different faiths. Jewish communities interacted with Hellenistic ideas, suitably incorporating them into their religious framework. The secretion affecting interpretations of text and broadened theological exploration. Social development. The Hellenistic age saw advancements in science and education, influencing urban development and the way communities approach knowledge and learning. The intellectual zeal manifesting from these advancements can be likened to an curiosity similar to the one found in Vegas. In delving into these elements, exploring Alexander the Great's presence in Jewish literature is like embarking on a literal on a literal quest to uncover how historical figures are incorrectly woven in cultural narratives. Alexander in Jewish literature, Talmud tales. In the Talmud tales, there are several stories about Alexander's conquest encounters with Jewish communities. These tales often portray him in a favourable light, highlighting his wisdom and open-mindedness. He is shown as a ruler who respected Jewish customs and even engaged in philosophical discussions with Jewish sages. Legendary encounters. Jewish folklore includes legends that depict Alexander as a bridge between characters that blend historical elements with moral lessons or philosophical dialogue. These stories tend to emphasize themes of peace, wisdom, and cultural exchange, portraying him as a curious leader keen on understanding diverse societies. Symbolic representation. His character sometimes symbolises the encounter between Jewish traditions and Hellenistic ideas. These narratives explore the interactions and adaptations that Jewish communities underwent during and after his conquest. Exploring the presence of Jesus in Jewish literature involves examining how a minute, bear with me. Involves examining how he is historically perceived within Jewish communities, often through texts that intersect with theological considerations and cultural dialogue. Jesus in Jewish literature. Historical context. In Jewish literature, Jesus is often viewed primarily in his historical role as the Jewish teacher, rather than a spiritual figure or Messiah as he is portrayed in Christian texts. This perceptive focus on his life within the Jewish community during the Roman era. Talmud and other writings. Some references to Jesus can be found in rabbinic texts like the Talmud. That when we talk about rabbinic Judaism refers to the type of Judaism that is practiced today. Texts like the Talmud, which occasionally mention him and his followers. These mentions typically focus on religious dynamics and are more critical or cautious due to theological divergence. Cultural and theological dialogue. Jewish literature occasionally engages in dialogue with the teachings attributed to Jesus, analysing them to understand and contrast them with Jewish beliefs. This can be seen in discussions around ethics, law, and the role of tradition versus invention. Modern interpretations. In more contemporary Jewish literature, Jesus is sometimes explored as a figure who contributed to religious discourse during his time. These works might delve into Jesus' Jewish roots and consider him as part of a broader historical and cultural narrative. The intersection between Alexander the Great and the Talmud is quite enhancing, preserving a blend of history, legend, and moral reflections within Jewish literature. Alexander in the Talmud. Meeting with Jewish sages. One of the most well-known Talmudic stories features Alexander visiting Jerusalem. During this visit, he reportedly met with Jewish sages, including the high priest, welcoming dialogues and showing respect for Jewish practices. Legendary accounts. The narrative in the Talmud often depicts Alexander as a figure embodying traits of wisdom and openness. There's a famous tale where the high priest, upon meeting Alexander, impressed him by prophesying his victories. Alexander's humility and willingness to listen are key moral themes in these stories. Symbolic interpretations. These tales are not just from historic or legendary recountings. They serve as allegories for the relationship between Jewish tradition and external influences. Alexander's presence in these narratives can symbolise the broader encounter between Jewish thought and Hellenistic ideas during his era. Moral and ethnic lessons. The Talmudic stories about Alexander often aim to impart moral and ethical lessons. They might illustrate virtues like humility, wisdom, and the value of cultural understanding and respect. In complementing the tales within the Talmud are truly a treasure chest of wisdom, unfolding narratives and intertwining legal, moral, and legendary elements. Notable tales from the Talmud. The oven of accurate. The story is a rich illustration of debate among rabbis regarding purity laws, when a supernatural event like a voice from heaven supporting one rabbi's view sparks reflection on human authority versus divine intervention. It teaches about the importance of democratic decision-making in community and rabbinical authority. The strong and the weak. Another tale involves the foolish sagas who focuses on particular aspects of the law when ignoring broader ethical implications. This story highlights the balance needed between literal interpretations and overreaching moral principles, encouraging deeper ethical thinking. Rabbi Akiva's wisdom. Rabbi Akiva, a legendary scholar, appears in several stories, such as when he begins learning to read at the age of 40, emphasising the lifelong journey of learning and growth, much of like art, which is the message I sought to portray through the Butterfly Princess show, which that is an educational and informative show. A notion, right, the doorkeeper and the poor. This tale illustrates compassion and humility, where a wealthy man learns lessons about kindness and social responsibility through interactions with a wise doorkeeper who helps the poor. These stories often serve as mirrors reflecting the complex interplay between law, morality, and daily life. Exploring the relationship between Alexander the Great and Jewish communities unravels a fascinating tapestry of cultural exchange and mutual recognition. Facts about Alexander and the Jews. Historical interaction. Alexander's conquest brought him to the land of Israel around the year 332 BCE. His presence marked the beginning of Hellenistic influence across regions, including Judea. This influx led to new cultural and philosophical exchanges, respecting Jewish traditions. In Jewish traditions, particularly in folklore and Talmudic tales, Alexander is often portrayed as respectful toward the Jewish faith. His interactions with Jewish leaders and communities are depicted as counterous and enlightened, contributing positively to Jewish history. Cultural segregation. Under Alexander's rule, Greek culture and ideas became intertwining with Jewish thought. The segregation influenced art, language, and education, contributing to a period where Jewish communities thrived while adapting to broader cultural currents. Anecdotal narratives. The Talmud carries stories about Alexander's visit to Jerusalem, describing encounters with Jewish sages. These narratives amplify mutual respect and wisdom, wisdom sharing, showcasing how dialogue contributed to peaceful coexistence and understanding. Impact of Jewish life. Alexander's policies often allowed for religious freedom and autonomy within his empire, which was beneficial for the Jewish populace. This acceptance facilitated growth and adaptation to challenging social political landscapes. The historical interaction between Alexander the Great and the Jewish community laid the foundations for bridging cultural gaps, influencing both ancient and modern eras in unique ways. Impact on ancient times, cultural exchanges. Alexander's conquest facilitated the spread of Hellenistic culture, introducing Greek art, philosophy, and political structures to the Jewish world. This cultural diffusion fostered intellectual and artistic growth, allowing Jewish thought to incorporate and respond to Greek ideas. Religious practices. The acknowledgement and respect Alexander showed towards Jewish religious practices reinforced the autonomy of Jewish communities. This respect ensured that Judaism retained its identity while adapting to a new cultural environment, setting a precedent for religious freedom. Economic growth. As part of a vast empire, Jewish communities experienced economic opportunities that came with increased trade routes and market access, thus facilitating social and economic stability. Impact on modern times. Philosophical influence. The fusion of Hellenistic and Jewish thought paved the way for development in philosophy and theology. This cross-pollution influence race thinkers as connections between ethnical and logical frameworks continue to be explored. Legacy of tolerance. Alexander's policies towards religious autonomy set early examples of tolerance and multiculturalism. In modern dialogues regarding religious coexistence, these historical interactions inspire efforts towards peace and understanding amongst diverse groups. Historical narratives and identity. The stories from the Talmud highlighting Alexander's interaction with Jewish leaders contribute to Jewish historical narratives, reminding of times when cultural negotiation led to mutual respect and growth, values still prevalent today. And that now concludes this week's episode of Every Day is a School Day with the Butterfly Princess. Hope you enjoyed this episode today, and I hope you can join me next week for the next episode. But until then, have a lovely rest of your week, and I will see you very soon. Bye-bye for now.